Today's class is called Take a Load Off. It's perfect if you're tired or if you've been on your feet for a long time and just need a little bit of stretching and lying down. So we're going to get started on our backs. You can start in any position that feels comfortable. Legs can extend out, or you can keep the knees bent and just let your hands and your arms rest anywhere. Close your eyes. Move your jaw around a little bit if it feels tense, and just try and relax it. Relax the space between your eyebrows. Begin to focus on your breath. Notice where you tend to feel any rise and fall. We'll begin to practice our 360 breath. The goal for our 360 breath is to feel the whole rib cage expand, front, side, and back as you breathe in, letting it all the way out as you exhale. On your next inhale, try to focus on the feeling of the rib cage expanding side to side. On your next inhale, focus on the ribs expanding front and back. So we want to start to create as much space as we can in the ribs by feeling that big expansion in all 360 degrees. You can keep the eyes closed or you can open them as we start a little bit of movement. We're going to bring our palms to our pelvic points. So those are the bony parts right at the front of our pelvis or our hips. They're called our ASISs. So we're going to keep the back of the skull down and the shoulder blades down. So our skull and scapula will stay on the mat. And we're going to do a little bit of pelvic tilting. So we're going to tip the pelvis forward, meaning you're going to try and lift your low back off the ground, getting that little gap between your low back and the mat. So that's tipping the pelvis forward. And then tip the pelvis backwards. Really try to press the sacrum down as if you were about to lift the tailbone up. Maybe it does lift up a little bit. Tilt the pelvis forward. So we lift that low back off the mat. Tip the pelvis backwards. Press that sacrum down right above the tailbone and maybe lift that tailbone up. So you're just going to go back in between these two movements of tipping the pelvis forward and back, feeling that movement in the low back, and just do that a few more times. Tilting forward, tilting backwards. Move as slowly as you'd like. Find that happy medium where we're not tipping forward and we're not tipping back. So our sacrum is on the mat. Back of the skull is on the mat and shoulder blades. Hands will stay at those pelvic points. Pick up your right foot. Now just try to bring your right thigh toward the belly as much as you can without anything in the spine or pelvis changing, and then step it down. Pick up your left foot. Try to bring that left thigh toward the belly without the spine or the pelvis moving. Step it down. Keep alternating right and left. Move as slowly as you want. So right now we're working our hip flexion, that ability to move from the hip joint, bringing the thigh toward the belly or torso toward the thigh without anything changing in the spine or the pelvis, meaning we're not doing that tip forward or back here. We're holding this neutral position as the hips move. Lower both feet down. We'll come into bridge pose now, so press into your feet, almost curl the tailbone up like we were doing that pelvic tilt backwards. Squeeze your glutes and use that squeeze in your glutes to lift the hips off the ground, coming into a really low bridge. So why don't you bring one hand to the front of your pelvis right around that pubic bone and one hand to the back of the pelvis at the sacrum. Now try to do that pelvic tilt forward and back here. So we're tipping the pelvis forward, arching the back, tipping the pelvis back, almost like we're tucking the tailbone under. And again, find that happy medium where the low back feels long. We don't feel like we're tipping forward or back. And that's our neutral pelvis. So that's the position we want to move from, is this place of not tipping forward, not tipping back, but right there in the middle. Keep the glutes nice and strong. And slowly lower your upper back down. Middle back and lower back. Keeping your sacrum down, bring the right thigh towards your belly and then grab maybe the shin wherever you can grab on that right leg. And we'll move a little bit deeper into this hip flexion. So really just gently pull the thigh to the belly, encouraging as much hip flexion as you can. But again, don't let anything change in the pelvis or the spine. If this feels like a good place to stay for a bit, stay here. If you'd like to try extending that left leg out, you can. But if you find that that feels a little too much in that left hip or low back or left knee, bring it back to that bent position. So if that left leg is extended out, that left hip is in a little bit of extension and the right hip is in flexion. So they're doing two different things. So it might cause a little pull or stretch. If that left leg was extended out, bring the foot back to the mat, plant that right foot back down. Check your triple S, back of the skull, shoulder blades, and sacrum. Pick up that left foot, grab the shin or anywhere you can grab and really encourage that hip flexion of the left hip. Bringing the thigh toward the belly. Stay here, or maybe try extending that right leg out. You can slowly extend it out. It doesn't have to go all the way out because again, that's a lot of hip extension for that right hip. So just see what feels good. Big breaths in and out. Bring that right foot back to the mat. If it was extended out, left foot will come back to the mat. Roll to your right side for a twist. So we'll come onto this side lying position. Bring your right arm wherever it feels comfortable. You can have it bent, you can have it reaching forward, you can have it reaching up if that feels okay, and just let the head relax. You can bring the thighs toward the belly as much as you'd like, but really hold that long spine so nothing's curling up or rounding. We're going to keep that neutral pelvis that's not tipping forward or back. And our left arm will slide across the right arm. Slide it across the chest. Open it out any amount for a twist. Now your head can stay where it was, wherever it feels good to gaze. If you're feeling a little too much sensation in the front of that left shoulder, bend your left elbow, making a goalpost shape. So we just want to feel this rotation in the thoracic spine, right about where our ribs are. Focus on that 360 breath. As the ribs rotate, can you still feel the breath expand into the sides of the ribs, front of the ribs, and back of the ribs? Undo your twist, roll back through center, set up for your twist on the other side. Roll to your left side. Bend the knees, bring them in toward the chest as much as you'd like. Keep that neutral pelvis so the low back isn't arching. Left arm reaches out, right palm starts on top. Right hand slides across the left arm, across the chest, opens out for any twist. Have the head resting wherever. Maybe bend that right elbow if that feels better for the front of that right shoulder. Really make sure the low back isn't arching. Feel the ribs expand all 360 degrees. Undo your twist. Roll back to center. Extend your right leg up to whatever degree feels good. The knee does not have to be straight. It can be much more diagonal. I just want you to feel a gentle stretch behind the hamstring. It shouldn't be shaking. We shouldn't be forcing it. We're just going to feel whatever your level of comfortable stretch is. And as we stretch the hamstring, we're going to point the toes. So that's plantar flexing the foot, really point, point, point. And then dorsiflex, pull the toes back toward the shin. Plantar flex, point the toes. Dorsiflex, pull the toes back. You're going to alternate between those two positions while we're here in this hamstring stretch. So we can get a little ankle mobility and strengthening as we stretch the calf, the hamstring. Moving as slowly as you'd like. It's great to get the feet up in the air as well. Hold that right foot in that flexed position, pulling the toes back toward the shins. We're going to bend that right knee. Keep your sacrum right above the tailbone on the mat. And we'll externally rotate this right hip, again, just to whatever degree feels comfortable. So your right knee and toes are going to start moving over toward the right, and then head back to that neutral position where you started. Foot is parallel. So now we rotate the hip a little bit, as if we're turning the toes out, and then back. Again, move at any pace you want, but keep that sacrum down. So we've still got that neutral spine, neutral pelvis. We're going to pause in this position where the knee is bent, turned out to the side. If this feels like a big stretch, stick with this. If you want to grab somewhere on the leg and go a little bit deeper by pulling the knee down, you can. But we want to make sure the pelvis doesn't start to turn to the right. So if you find that you're leaning over toward the right, hold that sacrum down and bring your left palm to that pelvic point and just hold it down. Check in with that big 360 breath here. Release the hand. Hug your right knee in toward your chest. Circle this right hip in both directions a few times. And then keep that right thigh in and circle your right ankle in both directions. Release it down. Extend your left leg up to whatever degree feels good. Have it as bent as you'd like. Doesn't need to be straight up toward the ceiling. Find that place where you feel like it's a gentle, comfortable stretch without forcing it. And we'll slowly point the toes, plantar flexing. And then pull the toes back toward the shin, dorsiflexing. Keep pointing and flexing, nice and slowly, and just notice where you feel a stretch in the calf, the foot, the hamstring when you point versus when you flex. Keep using that big 360 breath, keeping yourself relaxed and calm as we stretch and move. Flex the foot, bend your knee. We're going to work on that external rotation of the left hip. So we'll turn the left hip out so the knee and toes start to turn to the left. And then back to that neutral position where the foot is pretty parallel. moving at whatever pace feels good as we prep for that half happy baby stretch. So now we're just doing a little active rotation for that left hip as we continue to stretch that left leg. Hold it in that rotated position. Stick with this or grab somewhere on the foot or the leg. Maybe pull down to go deeper into your stretch. Check that pelvis. Make sure the sacrum is down. Make sure we're not rocking the pelvis toward the left. If you find that the pelvis doesn't want to stay down, right palm will come to that right pelvic point. Hold it down. Big 360 breaths. Hug that left knee in, circle that left hip in both directions without the pelvis rocking side to side. So we just want to feel this small circle of that left femur inside the left hip joint. And then circle the left ankle in both directions. Release it down. Coming into a figure 4 or thread the needle stretch, we'll flex that right hip, picking up the foot, belly toward the thigh, and then we'll practice that external rotation we just did. Cross your right ankle over that left thigh. Now again, we want to hold the sacrum down, make sure the pelvis isn't tipping forward or back, keeping the low back down. If this feels like a big stretch for your right hip, you can stick with this. You can take your right hand and start to press that right thigh away from you if that feels like a good stretch. If you want to go even further into this right hip stretch, you'll pick up that left foot. Doesn't have to be very high, just pause when that's plenty of a stretch. Hands can stay somewhere along your sides or on your body, or you can goalpost your arms, bending the elbows, bringing them up toward the head. Feels nice to open the front of the shoulders and chest. Feel the ribs expand, front, side, and back. You can add a little bit of rocking side to side if that feels good. Moving as gently as you'd like. Release the left foot down, then the right foot. Switching sides, starting with that figure 4 stretch. Pick up the left foot, flexing that left hip. Now we'll externally rotate the left hip, cross the ankle over that right thigh. Hold the sacrum down, check that the shoulder blades are down in the back of the skull. Stick with this, maybe go a little bit further into the stretch by pressing that left hand into the left thigh. If you want to feel more of a stretch, hold that sacrum down, but maybe pick up your right foot. Hands can stay on your body, along your sides, or you can goalpost your arms. Really slowing the breath down. Maybe rocking side to side a little bit if that feels good today. Release that right foot down, then the left foot. Bring the feet a little bit wider. Hold that sacrum down, and we're going to let the knees drop a little bit to the right and a little bit to the left. So it's almost like we're just windshield wipering our legs side to side. Move pretty slowly. We don't want to collapse the knees all the way to the ground because we want to keep that sacrum down. Come back to center. We're going to lift our feet up in the air, whatever that looks like for you today. It might just be bringing the thighs toward the belly, keeping that sacrum down. Maybe we pause here. Maybe we start to straighten a little bit more. Now again, we do not have to be all the way straight. We don't have to be all the way up to the ceiling. Whatever it looks like, we're just trying to get our feet up in the air, doing a little bit of an inversion here, keeping that sacrum down, back of the skull, shoulder blades, and we're just going to start to bend one knee and straighten the other. Again, it's going to look different on everybody depending on the day, so it might be a tiny little walk here. Doesn't have to be a full straighten and bend. But just do a little bit of moving here with the legs. You can point the toes and do this. You can flex. You can do both. And we'll try to keep the legs up. Again, whatever it looks like, bent, straight, whatever height. And we're going to try and pause here. If you're near a wall and you'd like to just take a legs up the wall, that is a great option, especially if you've been on your feet all day, just to release some of that tension, get the blood moving, the lymph moving. And we'll try and take 5 breaths together here, closing the eyes. Big inhale, 360 breath. Let it out strongly, either through your mouth or your nose. Big breath in. Let it all the way out. Good. Keep going with that big 360 breath. If you'd like to stay here a little longer, you're welcome to keep the legs up. If you want to bring the feet back down and stay in a Shavasana a little bit longer, you can. If it feels good to hug the knees in and rock side to side, just take any extra movement or stretch you'd like. Finishing the practice whenever you're ready.